Felicitous greetings, fellow fanatics.
Welcome back one and all, I'm Fanatic, and today I'm doing some suggestions inspired by my family. As you may recall, I went out of town back in April. While gone, we visited my cousin Steve and his wife Michelle. Over the course of lunch one day, we were talking about how the two of them are interested in tabletop games, but as the parents of two children, don't really have time for a dedicated gaming group, nor for long drawn-out games. This has inspired me to come up with a list of lighter games that do well with just 2 players. For the most part, these have no real order to them. It's not meant to be a top 10, just a number of suggestions for my family's collection. I did also try to make sure that the games on this list are relatively easy to obtain. Nothing that's out of print with high demand driving up the price. So without further ado, let's get started. To start off this list, you may recall that I recently reviewed Exceed by Level 99 Games, and it's still at the forefront of my mind. It's a card game meant to simulate the feeling of video game fighters, including a number of seasons directly based off popular video game series, such as Street Fighter, Shovel Knight, and BlazBlue. Although a bit more complicated than most of the games on this list, it's still not that hard to learn at a basic level. If you are playing with the same opponent most of the time, it really does lend well to mind games, as you can bluff back and forth with different kinds of feints that you can perform with your attacks. If you like fast-paced action, bluffing, and direct combat, you'll probably enjoy this one. If combat themes aren't your thing, then perhaps you'll be more interested in the likes of Splendor by Space Cowboys. A light economic game, Splendor has players competing to gain victory points by mining and selling precious gems, as well as trying to appease various nobles with their efforts. One of the modern classics of gateway games, Splendor is simple enough that just about anyone can jump in, and the artwork truly does look great. Alternatively, if you want something even faster with a very similar feel, you may want to consider The Market by Anthem Creations, a pocket game that can be played in about 10 minutes or so. Speaking of nobles and games that look splendid on the table, next up we have Khet 2.0, also known as laser chess. In Khet, you'll be using a series of mirrors to try and bounce a laser around in an effort to strike your opponent's pharaoh. It's clearly inspired by chess, with only a few simple rules to remember about how pieces move each turn. Both the original and Khet 2.0 versions have an Egyptian theme, while laser chess has more of a robotic sci-fi look, but they play pretty much the same. If you enjoy abstract strategy without too many pieces to remember, definitely give this one a look. Onto a more thematic pick, we have Disney's Villainous by Ravensburger. This is the only game on the list that's not mine, but rather belongs to my sister. My thanks to her for letting me borrow it for this review. In Villainous, you'll take on the roles of a villain from a Disney film in an attempt to play out the film from their perspective, effectively trying to ruin the ending by having your villain win. Each character plays very differently from one another, as each has their own unique deck of cards they can play, fate cards that represent the heroes that oppose them, and victory conditions that make them feel completely unique from one another. The base set comes with 6 villains, but one of the great things about it is that the expansions are actually standalone. They have everything you need to play, they simply include 3 villains instead of 6. I should also briefly note that there is a Marvel version available if you're more into that theme. Just be warned that you cannot mix the Disney and Marvel sets together, as there are some rule differences that separate the two. While on the subject of classic films, I should also mention Horrified, which was also made by Ravensburger. A while back I did a full review of this title based off the classic Universal monster movies. Players will have to challenge 2 to 4 monsters, including the likes of Dracula, the Invisible Man, Frankenstein's monster, and more. Each monster must be defeated in a unique manner. For example, with Dracula, you'll have to go around and smash his coffins before confronting him with holy items. To defeat the Invisible Man, you'll first have to gather evidence of his crimes before battling him in a showdown. If you like Pandemic but wish it had a bit more theme, or just want to avoid the disease theme with recent events, this game will be perfect for you. However, there's another game that actually got me to remove Pandemic from my collection before Horrified released. I've mentioned Kings of Israel a few times on my channel, and I'm happy to say that a full review is in the works. Funhill Games' first title, Kings of Israel, is heavily inspired by the likes of Pandemic, but feels like it does a lot more with its theme. In this game, you'll play as prophets that go around preaching against sin, attempting to turn ancient Israel away from idolatry and the like. If players manage to build enough shrines, they'll win the game. However, if too many sin cubes or golden idols appear, or if players simply take too long, then Babylon invades and carries the children of Israel into bondage. One of the most unique features of the game are the foretold events. When you draw a Sin and Punishment card, you'll sometimes be told to place it back into the deck face up. These are especially nasty effects, but give you a few rounds to prepare for them, and perhaps even avoid them entirely. Back to competitive titles, we have Turning Tides by Never Be Bored Games. Although not yet released, it is available for pre-order. In this bluffing card game, players will choose actions simultaneously as they attempt to either eliminate the enemy crew or sink their ship, while at the same time being careful not to take on water themselves. It should be noted that I previewed this with a prototype copy, so the components you see here are not final, but the game is quite solid for a short battle of the broadsides. But perhaps you're more of a lover than a fighter. In that case, Love Letter may be more up your alley. In this title, each player will be trying to get their letter to a princess. Whomever has their love letter end up in the hands of the person closest to the princess, or the last player remaining, wins the round. This title is well known for revolutionizing microgames, played with nothing more than 16 cards and some score counters to keep track of the winner of each round. Once both players know what they're doing, a 2-player round can easily be played in 2 minutes, making for a great deal of bluffing and mind games as you become more familiar with one another's tells. Next up, we have not just one game, but an entire line of them, the Tiny Epic series by Gamelin Games. This series is well known for releasing budget titles that pack a lot of game into a small box. They retail for $25 to $30, but are packed to the brim with enough components that they feel similar to full $60 games, albeit with smaller pieces. There's a wide variety within the line at this point, including competitive, cooperative, sci-fi, fantasy, programming, economic, tower defense, and so much more. The very first tabletop game I reviewed was in fact Tiny Epic Kingdoms, though my favorite thus far is Tiny Epic Mechs. Still, there's a little something here for everyone. If you want things even smaller, Tiny Epic Kingdoms and Tiny Epic Galaxies have both been remade even tinier with these ultra tiny versions, which are no larger than the size of a standard deck of playing cards. And finally, I've saved the best for last. Many of you were probably expecting this one to appear, but to close out the list, we have 7 Wonders Duel by Repos Production. 7 Wonders has long been a famed gateway game, allowing up to 7 players to play at once. However, it was also notorious for the 2-player mode not being so great. Duel reimagines this drafting game specifically for 2 players, and it is absolutely brilliant. You'll be competing with one another to score the most victory points as you take turns picking cards over the course of 3 ages. However, the game can end early if one player achieves military or scientific dominance over the other. With different strategies that will change according to which cards come out each game, there's plenty of variety in playing it over and over again, and it's probably my most played 2-player game. If you're interested in purchasing any of these games or learning more, links are included in the description. But what about you? Which games caught your eye? What do you think I should have added to the list? If you have any questions, remarks, or opposing points of view, leave them in the comments down below. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and ring that bell. And if you really enjoy my work, please consider funding my channel on Patreon. Until next time, farewell, fellow fanatics. Thank you again for watching. I have plenty more to share with you if you're interested. You can click up here above my head to subscribe to my channel. You can click over here on my monitor to see the most recent video that I worked on. Or if you prefer, you can click up here to open this mysterious vault and see what video that the YouTube algorithm has picked just for you.